to be covering Redeemer. So I'll show you on the screen. You should be able to see Redeemer. And Redeemer is a very easy box as a part of the starting point in Hack the Box. I'm looking forward to doing this with y'all as the next lesson in the series that I'm trying to help beginners get started with learning cybersecurity on a platform called Hack the Box. And we're just working through starting point. We'll do more than that just for you all to know. Like we'll go through starting point, and we'll also do what's called Hack the Box Academy modules. Those are more like formal courses, but you can consider this video series a course. This is getting you started. This is getting you on course to start to learn this stuff. And even if you're not a beginner, you can get a lot of value out of this because it's helping you have some kind of structured learning around concepts you might not be familiar with. Like I didn't become familiar with Hack the Box until I was already in the IT industry. I had already been teaching a little while, and then I came across Hack the Box. I think I was watching somebody else on Twitch talk about it, and I just started to try it out. It was back when Hack the Box had a invite challenge. You had to hack into the website before you could get a code to even create an account. And that invite challenge still exists, but I think they removed the invite challenge as a blocker so that beginners could just get in and get started. And then that's why they also created the Hack the Box Academy site, because the main site you're looking at right here is called HTB Labs. And there's like a bunch of different kinds of challenges that you can do on here. Hacking challenges, investigation and forensics challenges, mobile app stuff, pro labs, which are like these much larger environments, which I'm a huge fan of, but I'm not a big fan of starting there. I think starting point is a pretty good place to start just because they're pretty easy boxes and they do gradually get harder, but it gets you familiar with this whole concept of like hacking, which is a different way to look at IT. And it makes you, lift the hood, look at the engine, tinker, try to plug this wire in here, and get around system security and understand. And this is sometimes I'll say, I know I'm talking a lot. It's okay. If I'm yapping, just let me know in the comments you yap too much. But I like to kind of frame before we jump into things. When you approach, a Hack the Box machine, even as someone who's further along and knows kind of how to guide my own learning, and I have a lot of concepts already understood, sometimes I'll just get on Hack the Box just to be exposed to new tools, new methodologies, new vulnerabilities. Like even if you sort of finished a box in a couple minutes or 30 minutes and didn't spend hours on it, you could get exposed to something you didn't know about. Right? Like maybe you've never used Redis, and that's one of the things on this machine and this challenge that Redeemer has a vulnerability in Redis. And you're like, what is Redis? There's just so many cool technologies out there that getting on Hack the Box is one of those things that you're not just reading about it, you're actually interacting with it in a prepared scenario. So let's get into this. As a reminder, what I'm doing right now is I'm just showing you where on the main website where the boxes are and the guiding questions. I'll pull the guiding questions on screen for you to look at, and we'll answer those together, but we'll also work through like hacking the machine together. So let's start here with task 1. What TCP port is open on the machine? So before you get into like hacking the machine, you got to spawn it. And right now I've already done this off screen, but I also started Pwnbox, which is a hacking system that you can use in the cloud. This is running operating system called Parrot OS, which is a flavor of Debian. And I've already got that on another screen. I've got it full screen. So what I'm going to do is move this off screen, and you're going to see, my Pwnbox. Cool. So the first question is, what TCP port is open on the machine? And what we're going to do is I'm going to open up terminal here. And we'll zoom in. You don't have to do the zoom in part. That's just me trying to make it look better for y'all. All right, so we are here, and it looks like the box is spawned with an IP address. I'm clicking the IP address and pasting it in. We're going to ping it. Remember, just make sure you can actually receive pings before you try to hack it, because, you know, if you can't even reach it, it might be the case that the box has not spawned on the Hack the Box platform. And you could, when you're a beginner, it's really easy to get into Hack the Box and like assume that because of your lack of knowledge, you're not able to make any progress. But it could be the fact that the machine hasn't spawned, or that there's something, you know, a service that didn't start on that VM, which is, you know, how Hack the Box really builds a lot of these challenges, their virtual machines. But it's pretty stable these days. I haven't had many issues with it, but, you know, sometimes you do want to try to reset a machine or stop it and start it just to get it to work right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, you know, I'm going to nmap and then the IP address. You're going to wait for that. Remember, this is called enumeration. What is it? 129, 251, 231. So I will leave my mistakes in these videos just so you can see, like, I'm not perfect. Cool. It says all 1,000 ports scanned. Host is up. Ignored. So not shown. Closed TCP. So maybe it's UDP. Or maybe we have to do different types of scans here. Sort of the go-to. All right. What else should we try? We can ping it. We could try this here. -P. And then the IP. I need to just put that in RAM. So I think it already is. Nope. It's interesting. Why did it grab that? It hates us. Sometimes you just got to work through it. We're trying to enumerate. Oh, every port here. So we're looking through every port and we're looking for versions. So we know that it's got to be a TCP port that's open because the question, right? The question's asking for it. So there we go. Redis. 60 set. So the first answer here, let me pull this in. The first answer is 63,079 or 6,379. I can't count. 6,000. So go ahead and type that in and that'll be your answer. Which service is running on that port? It's right in front of you. It's Redis. What type of database is Redis? Choose from the following options. This is kind of a multiple choice. So an in-memory database. What command line utility is used to interact with Redis server? Enter the program name you would enter into the terminal without any arguments. So that's one of those questions that's, you know, assuming that you're going to do more research. So what I'm going to do is, let's try to do this with Grok. I've never done this with Grok. Let's do that. So the question, we could actually ask it, which command, I could copy and paste, but I don't want to do that. Command line utility is used to interact with Redis. This is what I'm talking about, vibe learning, I guess. Investigating Redis utility, you can see it thinking. It's Googling. Command line utility used to interact with a Redis server is Redis CLI. This tool allows you to run Redis commands directly from the terminal, providing an interface for managing with querying in the database. Let's check that back in our answers, and that is the answer. So I didn't copy and paste or anything. I just asked Grok that. Remember again, though, the goal is not just to get answers, but to learn as we're doing this. So, as you see me sometimes fumble around and make mistakes, that's how learning happens for me. I don't just have it perfect every time. And I get it. You want to make, like some folks, they want to make super prepared content that looks great and is well produced. And like, I want my stuff to sound great and look great and be easy to follow. But I'm not a fan of like too much of the flashy stuff because I want it to be easy to follow along. I'll say that. Like, my main goal is for y'all to follow along as I'm doing this. So if you're just watching me, great. But it'll be even better for you if you just follow along as I'm doing it. And you're doing the same thing, or you're trying it as well with me. Consider this a study session. So, all right, cool. So Redis CLI, which flag is used with the next question is which flag is used with Redis command line utility to specify the host name. So we could do like Redis CLI -- help. And we're looking at the help options to see which is the host name. So -H. We see that answer right here. It's asking about host name. -H. All right. So we've got the answer there. Once connected to a Redis server, the next question, which is task 6, is once connected to a Redis server, which command is used to obtain the information about and statistics about the Redis server? Okay, we could probably find that here in the help options, but we should also try to connect to the Redis server. It would be nice if like somehow within the UI here of Pwnbox, I could see the IP of the target. I mean, I could always just type it out, but it would be cool to have like a little Redis button up here. I could click as my active target, but then you'd have to connect your Pwnbox session. And it already is in a way, like at least your connection into Pwnbox is tied to your account. But if you could somehow do like this, just if a Hack the Box dev is watching, if you could tie this right here into if you could tie this active machine statistics directly in here, like I could pop out a panel and see that'd be great. But I also have, just to give you a little bit of my setup, I have 2 monitors right now. I've got my phone, which I use for, just monitoring the stream. Sometimes I use my iPad for that. And on one monitor, monitoring the stream, moving stuff out of frame, and then the other screen is like what y'all are seeing. But, I could add another screen and add even more. But, like, for y'all, you could do this on one screen, right? If you're not live streaming, you could do all this on one screen and sort of minimize or use your windows wisely. Pop windows into the left corner or top left or top right and just sort of make the best of your screen space. So we're looking at how to get information once we connect to the Redis server. But let's try to connect to the Redis server first. So I'm scrolling up here. The server host name. I wonder if we could just do -H and then the IP, because it's mentioning server host name, but the loopback, that's an IP address, which is a loopback address. Every computer has a 127.0.0.1 for like testing your local NIC TCP/IP stack. So we could do Redis CLI and then maybe -H and type the IP. Let's see again. I'm scrolling up to look at the IP. 10.129, 251, 231. Looks like I am connected to Redis now. I can do a question mark maybe. Set hints. Help. So the task wants us to know which command is used to obtain information statistics about the Redis server. So let's check here. Like we could ask Grok that. I know the answer. I'm just like trying to give you an idea of what you would go through. So you could say like, which command is used to obtain information and statistics. I don't care how I spell when I use Grok, by the way. It's kind of lazy. I'll do about the Redis server. That's why it's like vibe hacking or vibe learning, because you're just like, hey, it'll get it. And it is like dangerous because, yes, maybe it can make me stupid by relying so much on artificial intelligence. It'll make my intelligence artificial. Look, told me the info command. So that is the right answer. I will type info. Excuse me. And we're seeing some information about Redis here. Cool. What do I do with all this? The world may never know. It says, what is the version of the Redis server being used on the target machine? Did we see that somewhere? The version right here. So Redis 5.0.7 is the answer. And that is the answer in Hack the Box as well. So which command is used to select the desired database in Redis? So we could ask Grok. Which command, and I spelled which wrong, but it's okay. Or it's really just a typo. Which command is used to select a database in Redis? And notice how it's like really going and finding these answers for us, because sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And it blows my mind that it's like, so select is the command, and that's the correct answer. So it blows my mind that it went and looked that up. Like it made it look like it went and looked that up. You know, I still don't quite understand how LLMs work and these chatbots, but you know, they're definitely smart. Like they're doing what we would have done otherwise, right? That's why I'm saying it's faster, because I guess, am I dumber? I don't know. Am I dumber because I'm doing this? Like, does that make me dumb for using a faster way to go look up an answer? Because I technically would have done the same thing. It just went and found several websites, in this case 5 different web pages, where that answer looked like that was there. And it's not always right, but a lot of times it is. And it's like, this is pretty cool, you know? So why not just do it this way? So I'm doing select. Wrong arguments for select command. So we do have to find the database. So what, I guess the other question we should ask that's not an actual question here is, how do I list the databases, right? How do I list the databases in Redis? So let's ask Grok, how can I list databases in Redis? And when I'm prompting, you know, this is not breakthrough stuff. Like, I hope it's helping you, but it's like, I'm not acting like I invented this way of prompting. I'm really just talking to it like I would somebody more competent than me, or more with more just like raw ability to go get knowledge faster that I didn't already have. Like that's what I'm doing. Like assuming it's like a really like knowledgeable colleague, I'm just asking it, you know? So it's info, config get, let's see. Config get databases. So we could do config get. Okay. So here we go. There's databases and there's 16. The next question though is how many keys are present in the database with index 0? Config get databases. So what if we select 1? Or can we exit? Probably not the right way. So config or select. We could select 0. But there was 0. I wonder why it doesn't list 0. Because I'm assuming this is index 1 and this is index 2. All right. And then it's asking select 0. So I'll say like how do I find how many keys are present inside the database with index 0. So we're basically learning how to query the database. For those that don't know what a database is, data lives in a database. Applications on the front end, like for example, Grok, that's a front end web application that we're working with. And then there's a database on the back end somewhere. I would imagine they're using some kind of high speed database like Redis. You know, I know ChatGPT was using Redis. You should look this up. There was a vulnerability in Redis that caused ChatGPT in the early days, chats from users to leak. Like you could use this vulnerability in Redis to view other people's chat history, which is a problem, of course. Right, so it says using info key space. So let's do info key space. So really, like I like to think of databases as the back end of really any application where the data lives. If you think about Amazon's front end is where you shop and place orders, but there has to be some kind of inventory database, right, to store how do they know dynamically how many versions of that book or this JBL little mini speaker are like available near you, to the point where you can just order it, and depending on where you live, you can just get it same day or in the next couple days. There's a database where this information is dynamically updated. And it's, of course, it's not as simple as that. There's now, AI and machine learning, and over the years there's been machine learning models built in and automation built in to, sort of dynamically keep up with this, and more like a recommendation engine, being able to like sort through inventory, look at your preferences and what you've purchased, and then recommend to you things that you would buy, that you would most likely buy. Like that's one use case for machine learning in websites. But ultimately a database is what it's the name, it's in the name, right? And Redis is an in-memory database, and that there's a speed advantage for in-memory databases. Just worry about that for now. And we're a hacker would try to target a database through the web application because they know, like SQL injection type attacks, which we will talk about in a future video, where you might find a form and try to inject SQL commands through that form, or inject commands that are ultimately at some point in the process getting translated into SQL or whatever language that database is. You can speak to that database in and query that database and try to extract information that you're not supposed to get to through the web app itself. But that, I'm rambling. Let's keep doing this. So what did it ask? It said, how many keys are present inside the database with index 0? So we connected select 0, and then the answer should be 4 if we connect it to the right index, right? So 4. Yeah, and that's the answer here. So input that in task 9. Right, okay, so now it says which command is used to obtain all keys in a database. Okay, I don't know that off the top of my head, but guess where we're going? In I'll say Redis database. Like that, and this keeps bringing up that question, like, is this lazy? If you're just hacking a system, the reason we're going through starting point is because it is giving us this framework to go through. And these are some of the questions that you should ask yourself if you landed on any database, or like if you're enumerating a database and trying to discover the elements of the database and where the data is and how far you can get. This is, the mindset you should be in. So like, you're clearly not going to have these questions in front of you in real life, but this is a good learning experience. So keys, asterisk. And the answer is that, Grok new. Boom. Now it's wanting us to find the flag, right? So we found the keys in the database. We're gonna go select flag, or we could even do 3. And how could I list that? Maybe info key space? Nope. Drop. Let's see. I don't know the syntax of Redis off the top of my head, so we can say. It says for safer non-blocking overload, use the scan command instead with a cursor starting at 0. That's not what we want to do. So this is where we're like, what are we trying to do here? I selected a key. How do I view its content? That's what I typed. You might not be seeing it because it's behind me. Right, so it's type the key name. So type flag. None. Get key name. We could use retrieve the value based on type. This is none. The type is none. Or what if we type 3? Nope. Yep. So that's the same. What if we get flag? Nil. Okay. Trying different things here. There's no risk in this. It's hack the box. Select. We're in there. Dump. Not a command. Or dump flag. Still nil. Sometimes when I don't know what to ask it, just give it the output, right? Set It says possible output string list set, z set, sorted set, hash, stream, etc., or none if the key doesn't exist. But we know the key exists. So watch this. Give it this. And this is where some good learning can happen, because you may not have the context or the knowledge to ask the question. This is where it's amazing, and this is where I know it's not just auto complete, right? Because it can get within the context of your conversation what you're looking for. So it says the request shows a Redis command. This is what it's thinking, the Grok. And it's kind of doing some of the learning for us. It went and found a blog, a Hack the Box blog, which is impressive because we never told it, right? And there's no like output here that I shared with it that actually tells us it's Hack the Box. That's maybe flag, but like somebody did a write up and it found the write up. And we could tell it, don't just give me the answer, teach me. We could do that too. Select 3 might be a mistake. Now let's get a full summary of the machine exploitation, including user and root flags. Now, what cheating would be in my mind is if in the chat it just spits out the flag based on somebody's blog, but it's given us, hopefully it'll give us just the commands. So it says, note the select command switches you to the database index 3 and returns OK. However, based on the keys you listed earlier, from what appears to be database 0, there are no keys in the database 3. So I switched index. That's what I did wrong. Unless populated separately. If you're trying to access flag, the third key in your keys output, note that the select is for switching databases. Right, so I used select. The mistake I made was I switched the database instead of switching to the flag. Like I was assuming, just guessing, that select allowed me to select the key, but I'm looking for keys in the database with index 0. So then it says switch back to select 0. So let's select 0. I kind of understand what it wants me to do now. So select 0 to get back in the to get back into database with the index 0, and then type flag. And it's a string. So let's see, that's a different output, right? Because now it's telling us the data type is string, and then we can get flag. So we're right about the get command, allowing us to get that key. And that should be our flag. So basically, just getting familiar with the basics of Redis as a database system, and that we could connect right to it. And it's kind of introducing you to this idea that sometimes you can access a database through a public IP, right? So on Hack the Box, when you're scanning the system, the idea is you're in Pwnbox. Pwnbox is like your hacking machine. Like on a real penetration testing assessment, you would have some kind of hacking machine. If it was a public test, an external test, then you're setting up a machine that would be simulating how a hacker, real life malicious hacker, would be trying to get into a network from the public internet. So when you scan an IP address using a tool like Nmap, and by the way, don't just go scanning and trying to hack into any system. That is illegal. right? Like unauthorized access in most countries without written permission is illegal. That's one thing. That's why Hack the Box is so cool, because you can do this legally. There's really no risk. It's a paid service. You're having fun in a controlled environment. But these are some vulnerabilities that really exist. So in the real world, hackers are going to be trying to get into Amazon, like we talked about earlier. They're trying to poke and prod. And if they're running scans against Amazon's IPs and namespace, which is their domain names, Amazon.com or whatever subdomains off of Amazon.com, and they're going to be looking for these services to be exposed externally. Ideally, and I'm sure Amazon has a strong security team, ideally, Amazon is not going to publicly expose anything that doesn't need to be publicly exposed. So when we scanned this machine and we saw the ports open, that meant that the database itself was accessible publicly, which is the vulnerability. The vulnerability is technically in the misconfiguration of the database. When it was initially set up, it shouldn't have been allowed to listen on the same IP as the external world is able to reach. It should be internal, because technically the user, if I'm thinking about Amazon again, or even like Grok or ChatGPT, the user never really needs to access the database management system itself, right? They only need to access the website. The website is their way to actually use and interact with the databases, right? It's a user-friendly way of doing that. I mean, video games have databases, all the assets, everything, your profile, usually stored in a database. And so for us to be able to scan the IP address and see the database, the TCP port listening on that IP, or using that IP to listen externally, then the problem is in misconfiguration. Because only the web server should be able to communicate with the database, right? Because any action going from the web server or the wherever the web app is, if it's on the same machine or a different machine, the database should be kind of on the internal network, shielded away from the public world. So for us, we were able to basically, it seems like really simple, and all we had to learn was Redis syntax and commands. But the concept is important, in that if you ever are setting up a database, which if you're getting into IT, you probably will, and you may not need to know much about the inner workings of the database to get an application working. You just follow a guide that says, a vendor of software gives you on how to set up their software, and you're just setting up users for an SQL database, and you're hitting next install on a GUI-based install system. You may accidentally check an option that exposes that database management system to listen on an IP that it doesn't need to. Especially when setting up something that's public facing, right? The other thing was we didn't need a user of any kind to log in. So the database management system, when we used Redis CLI to connect to it, it didn't ask us to authenticate. We just got in. So that's a problem too. So these kinds of vulnerabilities are more so misconfiguration vulnerabilities. So, so that's Redeemer. That's getting a little bit familiar with connecting to databases, navigating them, keys, index, getting the contents of a key, and that's Redeemer.